the Butler Foundation founder, Mr. Bill Butler.
Let's give Parker and Michaela another round. So I think all that applause is to say thank you for being willing and courageous enough to stand up here and share parts of your life. It's not easy, and but to the extent, but it becomes easier to the extent somebody else may benefit because of your experience. So, the two of you are very much an inspiration to us. I think to everybody here in the room, but especially to us who are part of the Butler Foundation. You're an inspiration. That word's been used a little bit tonight. It's a bit of a theme I think the Barber created. I just want to say, starting out, that there's no work that we do that's more rewarding than the work of trying to help young people to do what they otherwise may not have had an opportunity to do. Education is very important today. The fact that I'm sorry, not important, I mean it's very important, but it's also very expensive. And the fact that you were scholars with us doesn't mean, not an indication of poverty, okay? But it's expensive, and we're glad to help in that regard. Our executive director here gave me a mission tonight. She likes for me to get up here and to share a little bit of my life and background for the purpose of inspiration, I guess, as well, hopefully for somebody. There's some pretty good stories out there in our past. I'm going to give you the cliff notes on one. I was stopped one day on the streets about 10 years ago, I guess it's 10 years ago, by a man who looked to be about 40. And he said, "Are you Mr. Butler?" I said, "Yeah." Introduced himself. We got acquainted. I said, "What do you do?" He said, "Well, I'm a brand manager at Procter & Gamble." I said, "In fact, I have 2 brands." I said, "Really?" I said, "You look awful young." Because a brand manager at Procter & Gamble there's not so many of them. There's maybe, a dozen or 20. I don't know. Oh, he said, "I put in my time. I went to Belgium. I went to Brazil and lived and worked, and I went to China and worked, and that's how they prepare them for brand manager, by going around the world and understanding everybody's culture." And then we chatted for a few minutes, and he said, "You wouldn't know this, but he said, you paid my way through college." And he was one of the very first people that ever had one of our NKU scholarships 15 years ago. So that's our inspiration. We don't do this necessarily just for you. We do it for ourselves too, because there's nothing more rewarding that we do in the Butler Foundation. We host the event here this evening in order to meet you personally, to get to know you, for you to get to know us, and for us to get to know also your parents and guardians, grandparents, I think, sometimes, are here, and a lot of your teachers and counselors. Let me preface by saying that in terms of sharing our life, that the Butler family didn't grow up in Indian Hill or Hyde Park or even Fort Mitchell or Fort Thomas. We grew up in Covington. We lived at 14th and Greenup. It's called Bird Street. There is no 14th, so it's Bird Street. Until I was 17 years old. My brother Marty, I guess, was 8 before we moved up to Park Hills. But we grew up in the urban area. I often go by the house. There were 8 kids 2 parents and a dog, in a modest house, and I still wonder about it when I drive by it, how we got in there. Apparently we had 1 bathroom. My father was a plumbing contractor, and he taught us hard work, and he had a big heart. He taught us to help others wherever we had a chance. I was fortunate to have the experience of a private, religious, and value-centered education like yourselves. Take advantage of it. First, this was at the Cathedral Parish School in Covington, which is now the diocesan headquarters. And then at St. Xavier High School when it was still in downtown Cincinnati next to the church. Now it's a parking lot. I could walk there, I could take a bus, and back in those days, I had my private drivers. I didn't get a 4-year degree. I studied engineering at the age of 21. At the age of 21, I made a commitment to Christ to turn myself over, and I experienced what is known as being born again. And that's been fuel to my tanks for all these years. But at the age of 22, about the same time, I went into business to build buildings. And Corporex is a company that evolved and it's done work in 27 states. Some of our local projects are River Center and Towers in Covington, about 7 buildings. And Circleport Business Park out by the airport. And now we're developing the Ovation project in Newport, Kentucky. But we've done projects in Denver and up in the mountains, and we built in Utah and California and Chicago and Boston and downtown Washington, D.C. So, through the years when people asked my late wife, Sue, what her husband did, I always tell this a little differently than what Barbara kind of outlined here. So, when we were young in business, nobody knew us. So we go to the annual Chamber of Commerce dinner where nobody knew us to get acquainted with people, and Sue would meet somebody and they'd say, "What's your husband do?" And she would say, "He dreams dreams and follows them." I do dream big, always did. I'm known as a visionary in the community. And I always like to share somebody else that dreamed big. Maybe he didn't know he was dreaming big at the time. But if you think about the city of Chicago, and remember that there was a big fire back at the turn of the 19th century, or 18th century, and it's 19th century. And most of the city, or a lot of the city, burned down. And one of the things they did with the rubble was push it out into the water. And then they built a road there called Lakeshore Drive. And there was an architect, city planner there by the name of Daniel Burnham. And he prescribed that you couldn't build on the other side of Lakeshore Drive. And if you think of Chicago today, you think of the water, you think of Lakeshore Drive, you think of all the tall buildings on the west side of Lakeshore Drive. And he said, "Make no little plans. They have no magic to stir men's blood, and of themselves will not be realized. Make big plans. Aim high in hope and work, remembering that a noble logical diagram," this is important, "once recorded, shall never die." There was a study in Harvard University a number of years ago where they went back over their graduating class and tracked them for 20 years. And they interviewed all the people as to where they were. Let me see if I get this. It's been a while. So those people that had a plan, they had a purpose, a vision for their life, they were in management positions. Okay? Those people, those folks who had a plan and verbalized their plan about who they wanted to be, they were in officer level positions. Those people who had a plan for their future, verbalized it, and then recorded it, wrote it down. They were the CEOs. So whenever I saw Daniel Burnham's, statement, it was so profound because it proved out that point. Make big plans, aim high, and hope and work, remembering that a noble, logical diagram, once recorded, shall never die. If I can realize big dreams, you can do it too. I had no tools that were better than what you students today have. But I always said I had a lot of idealism, energy, and a terrible need to succeed, which I heard tonight from Porter and Michaela. I believed in myself, which I heard tonight from Porter and Michaela. Parker, sorry. Sure you wouldn't like to be Porter? And I had a lot of help. So do not underestimate the help that you can have from the relationship with Jesus Christ. I could not have done what we have accomplished alone. I'm thankful for my parents and others who supported my dreams, and my brother and sisters. And I was looking at Parker and Michaela here and thinking, look at their bonds. Don't ever lose those bonds. Support each other. Your parents, too, of course, are very essential support for these aspiring youth. Today, I'm able to give back, and that's what fills my heart at this late point in my career. I think I could have done that without notes, but I would have left something out, Barbara, right? She wants to make sure I say those things. I think in summary, we really appreciate your coming here tonight, the parents, the counselors, the teachers of the schools, obviously the students, scholars, and we do this once a year. It's very inspiring to us, and it encourages us to do that much more. Okay? Thank you very much.